Okay, so in part one, we've looked at why there is a magic moment in trolley cases, and that explains why it would be justified to kill in accordance with a kill one to save five policy. Now I want to look at the transplant case and say, why is it not permissible to proceed and kill one to save five in the transplant case? Because in many ways it looks similar. These are 6 prima facie innocent people, haven't done anything to deserve the fact that they're sick or healthy, and we can maximize utility. We can bring about a better outcome, surely, by killing one to save 5. Well, remember, for Thomson, maximizing utility is not enough. She requires this special thing of it being in everyone's interests to adopt the killing policy. That's what I call there being a magic moment. And she says, at no time is there likely to be a magic moment for transplant cases. So, you might of course ask then, well, why not? That's not very satisfying to tell us there is no magic moment. Why isn't there? Her strategy here is not to say she can be absolutely sure in every single case there never will be one. It's possible, she concedes, but unlikely. She thinks that there are 3 reasons that are going to typically occur in many such scenarios, and they will give reason for at least one person to be able to reasonably say, this is not in my interests. And if one person or more can say that, then that's enough to ruin the magic moment. That's enough to mean it would be infringing someone's rights to go ahead and kill one to save 5, and you can't do that. So let's go through the 3 reasons. First, we shouldn't be asking about whether there's a magic moment back when we are, tiny babies. We should wait until we are ourselves kind of moral agents, able to make decisions for ourselves. Who knows exactly when that is? We don't need to be precise, but let's say maybe it happens around the time you're 13 or 15 or 18 or 21 or something like that. But by the time we're able to make decisions about whether or not we should sacrifice our lives for others, which is what one of these decisions hypothetically would be, we already know something about our health. Of course, we don't know exactly what's going to happen to us. All sorts of possibilities lie in our future, but many of us know that we're at greater or lesser risk of certain sorts of health incidents arising for us. So we might know, for instance, that we have a family history of cancer, or that we have a high probability of getting some sort of genetic disease because a number of our family members have that genetic disease. Or we might know because of our lifestyle choices that we are likely to be very healthy because we are fit and active and eat very well and so on and so forth. This means not everybody faces the same risks. Remember when the 6 track workers are getting together to think about what will happen if a trolley situation arises? Because it was completely random in that case, they all faced precisely a 5 in 6 chance of death if they didn't adopt the killing policy, or a 1 in 6 chance if they did adopt the killing policy. But in the case of a hypothetical organ transplant whereby one healthy person will be cut up to save 5 sick people, if there's anybody in that group who thinks themselves particularly healthy compared to the rest of the group, they will say, you know what, I am more likely to die under the killing policy than under the needing an organ transplant policy. Let me re-say that. I am more likely to die under the killing policy than under the letting die policy. Right? If they let 5 people die of organ failure, I'm very unlikely to be that person, one of those 5 people dying of organ failure. So I would rather not adopt this policy. To give it an analogy, back in the Trolley case, Thomson describes, what about a version of the case where there is a special type of worker called a beam fitter, and this worker always works on his or her own. The beam fitter then would not agree at any point that it's in his or her interests to adopt a killing policy, because the killing policy would always kill a beam fitter. And it's pretty straightforward then. So Thomson actually thinks if the employment arrangements of the track workers were that some are beam fitters and the rest are not, that it would in fact not be permissible to pull the lever in that sort of trolley case. And so for the same sort of reason, it's not permissible to kill in a transplant case. Okay, that's the first reason. Second, when people are weighing up the options they face in the trolley problem, they're weighing up, so there's the kill policy and the no-kill. And there are two features that make these policies kind of relevant. One is, what is the probability that I die? Okay, in the killing scenario, assuming it's perfectly random again, I only have a 1 in 6 chance of dying. But the no-kill policy will have 5 in 6 chance of dying. But then there's the question of how do I die, right? And in the original trolley case, it's I get squashed by a trolley or I get squashed by a trolley. There's no real difference except that in this case, I'm squashed in the company of 4 others, whereas here I'm squashed all on my own. But these don't seem to be very relevant differences, right? But now compare what's going on in the transplant case. Now it's a case of if the surgeon doesn't do anything and lets the 5 patients die, well, they die of organ failure. But if the surgeon does kill, yes, it lowers my chance of dying, but what's the sort of death I'll suffer? It's kind of, a surgeon murdering me, you might say. Or maybe that's an unnecessarily emotive word because it sort of implies that it's wrong, but a surgeon killing me, it's a deliberate act by a human being involving them putting a knife into my body and causing my death. Now, although in general I prefer a lower probability of dying, so that's good, I might really hate this particular way of dying. I might hate it so much that I would rather take a higher risk of dying by a more attractive way of dying. That's the thought. It's not going to hold in every case, but remember, Thomson is offering us a number of reasons why there might fail to be a magic moment, and this indeed seems to be one of them. Finally, this is a bit more complicated. This reason is, by agreeing to this policy, we might in fact make things worse for us and fail to achieve the very thing we were hoping to achieve. Health doesn't just depend upon chance. In the case of the trolley case, it was just a matter of sheer chance that you're very unlucky that the trolley's on the tracks and it's random which track you're on. But health depends upon choices like choices of what to eat, whether to exercise, whether to avoid smoking, and so on and so forth. Once this policy were adopted, though, everyone would know, you know what, my chances of dying as a result of smoking, say, are lower than they were before. Because if I smoke, I might still get saved because I get the necessary organ transplant from a healthy person who doesn't smoke. So if I'm weighing up whether or not to smoke in that case, smoking now looks more attractive. Unhealthy behaviours that increase the risk of needing an organ transplant, are less unappealing than they were before. So that might increase the frequency with which transplant scenarios arise. So the probability of dying now as a result of a transplant scenario has gone up overall, even though, yes, within the transplant scenario, a 1 in 6 chance is better than a 5 in 6 chance. If transplant scenarios are occurring 10 times more often, that's definitely worse for everyone. This phenomenon is known as moral hazard, and something like it can occur whenever you have an insurance market, right? Because what insurance does is it takes a group of people who all suffer various risks. But because it's an unlikely event that happens, okay, let's say only these 2 people are affected by the risky event of having a car crash, say, we share the cost of that risk among everyone. But now, if you don't know whether or not you're going to suffer that, whether or not you're going to need the insurance, but you know that the insurance scheme is in place, you might in fact start behaving in a more risky way. And that then pushes up the cost of compensating you for your accidents. So providing the insurance itself might increase the frequency of the events you're trying to insure against, which is about an undesirable outcome. In order to try and avoid this problem of moral hazard in insurance markets, insurers do things to make things extra unappealing for those that they think are extra risky. So that's why young drivers have to pay a much higher excess when they have an accident than older drivers, right? So an older driver with some experience might pay $200 or $300 as an excess when they have an accident, whereas a young driver might pay $800 or $1,000. So much more of the cost of that risky behaviour is borne by the risky person, so hopefully they're not going to be extra careless. So the problem of moral hazard seems to arise in the transplant case. Adopting that policy could lead to more transplants being necessary, which is bad for everyone. And thus, that's a reason why we might reasonably say it's not in our interest to adopt that policy. But no such risk of moral hazard arises in the trolley case. So that's not a reason to ruin the magic moment. So those are the three differences. 1, not everyone faces equal risks. 2, not everyone thinks that these deaths are equivalent in manner. They might be extra horrified by dying as a result of the surgeon chopping them up. And thirdly, agreeing to this policy might multiply the risks of dying of organ failure and also the risks of dying as a result of being chopped up by a surgeon. Basically, it will increase the frequency of these terrible transplant situations arising in the first place. And I think that's where we'll leave it.